Welcome back to KTN Newsline. Tonight, our focus is away from politics. We want to talk and delve into a conversation that is affecting every Kenyan, you and I included. That is a fuel shortage. For the better part of this week, Nairobi has been a beehive of activities with motorists flocking different petrol stations looking for that precious commodity so that to conduct their daily activities. But it's not only Nairobi, also been experienced in other parts of the country, fuel shortage. Importers are saying the government needs to pay them their dues. The government says that they're ready to pay them their dues after President Uhuru Kenyatta signed that supplementary bill. But what is the situation on the ground? Is it any different from what we have been reporting here on a KTN News for the better part of this week and also last week when that fuel shortage began? To have with me in studio, actually, to have this discussion with us is Joseph Karanja, the chairman of Kenya Independent Petroleum Distributors Association, that is KIPEDA. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Karanja.
Thank you for inviting me.
Welcome. And also joining us virtually for this discussion is Honorable Bilo Kero, former senator for Mandera County, just to tell us the situation, is understanding of what this fuel shortage means for the country. Have members of parliament failed Kenyans? Has the government failed Kenyans? And what is our role as Kenyans to ensure that we have this precious commodity on a daily basis? Gentlemen, once again, asante sana for joining us here on a KTN Newsline. But let me begin with Karanja. Where is the fuel? That is the question that Kenyans are asking. Where is the fuel?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. And it is good to start at that point because the government is saying that there is enough fuel in the country, even to take us for over 22 days. The KPC also confirmed that they have the products. Mm-hmm. But now the question is, what is happening? Why not feed the Kenyans? I want to approach it from where I sit, because if we believe what the government is saying, and we are supposed to believe, we know, and actually from the practical point of view, we are seeing a few trucks coming out with the fuel, loading the fuel and taking it to the specific chosen petrol stations. But it's not going out. They are not releasing it full blast, although the product is here. Two things here. Two things now comes to. Two questions comes to play. Because for us, independents, in fact, I just want to approach it from where we are, because Kenyans are seeing it now for the last 2 weeks or so.
It's been 2 weeks now.
But for us who are in this business, started experiencing this thing long time ago. We have always, within our circles, we have always complained that if we are not careful, the independence may just be suffocated and pushed out. Mm-hmm. If we start talking about the products being in Kenya, and we are not getting it, but it is going to Uganda, it is going to Rwanda, it is going to other places.
It's actually traversing Kenya to EAC.
Yes,
countries.
but here in Kenya is not being, supplied. Then it comes to, confirm our fears that it is a war against the independence. Right. Leave alone what other people are thinking or what they are talking about. But we are there, we can see. The trucks, a few trucks strategically, like today is Tuesday. You go to the depots early in the morning, you find trucks, big trucks, they're lining up. At around 10, 11, they vanish. They have taken the products, they have gone. They are supplying bits and bits. But then after that, it is dry.
All right.
They are not letting us to get the products.
All right. So, Honorable Kero, Mr. Karanja brings in a very important point. It is not a level playing field for, if I may say, fuel business people within the country.
Yeah, the level playing field problem has been there for a long time, but that is because of limitations on our infrastructure. The storage at KPC, the pipeline capacity is limited, and so there is the transportation and storage is rationed by the ministry on the basis of the market share. And so when the minister says, the PS earlier this week was saying that 60% of the market share is owned by 3 companies, he may be right. But at the same time, he was also blaming the independents for lacking capacity. But I think that the point is, if the 3 control the 60% of the market share, then they should we should be having fuel in the stations. But I think the larger picture, in my view, is that a few years ago we decided that petrol was liberalized like every other sector of the economy. But we came around and we said, no, let us control the price of petrol. Anytime you control the price of a commodity, one of the side effects, let me tell you, in economics, one of the side effects is that there is going to be or likely to be a shortage, because the price control in effect means you are limiting the price at which the investor is selling. And so an investor is a businessman, is an entrepreneur, he wants to make money. So when he is not making money and the product is going to be at a loss, he's not going to put it on the market. So in the case of petroleum, what is happening is that the cost of the product is actually far more than the pump price. And so the government decided to take up that difference and provide it as a subsidy and pay for it directly to the station or to the traders. And so the challenge is the government has not been able to actually do that. So there is a backlog of payment. Traders are claiming it's up to the tune of 20 billion or something. So then what happens is that if you are a businessman and you are supposed to put the product in the market, and you are not able to make money on it, and the government has pledged to give you that difference, but you are not getting it, it hits your cash flow. In the long term, then you start having challenges, really. So I think, and then there are doubts. People are going for elections. The new government might come in. So traders are worried that, look, if this 20 billion keeps on increasing, and you're paying out of pocket, in effect, they're financing out of their pocket their loss. So I think, in my view, that is where the challenge is.
All right. So 2 questions arise from your statement. One, are we seeing a situation where looks like the importers are holding the fuel so as to wait for the announcement by IPRA on the 14th, the new fuel prices, so that they can know whether they're releasing the fuel or not? And the other question is there likelihood that importers want to sell their pump to the government at a higher price?
No, I think the hoarding is not the right word, but there's no doubt that the product has been imported, because every month the ministry conducts tenders for the supply of the product. So as Karanja says, the product is available. But then the uptake now from the KPC and from the system and putting it into the stations is where the traders are getting concerned, because of no other reason, in my view, other than that they are not being paid for that difference, because that difference amounts to a loss if they don't get the money. And because if the product is costing you 150, the government tells you sell it at 134, we will give you the difference in subsidy in cash. You are not getting that difference. You are absorbing that loss. Now, of course, the government is going to pay at some point in time, but for how long can you continue subsidizing? So I think what they are doing is to kind of slow down, to try and put pressure on the government. And I think it's worked. You've seen now the government has already released this morning some 8 billion. That is, I think, in my view, that is the issue. The second point you asked is about the price increase. That is quite likely, obviously, because of the, the pricing mechanism is such that it takes into account the movements in the past couple of months. And that is when really the price had shot up. At one time, it went even up to 120, 130, dollars per barrel. So it's quite likely that it's going to go up, and the government again faces the same challenge of absorbing the extra or the additional cost increase, or pass part of it to the consumers. So there is both options. But to the trader, it really doesn't. It's not about hoarding because they are waiting for price. Price increase is a foregone conclusion. If the international price goes up, you expect it to go up. But I think the issue is one of trying to put pressure on government to release their money. I think for me that seems to be the issue.
All right. So I need to give our viewers, the breakdown of some of the Kenyan petroleum sales in terms of the market share. Who has been making the market share between the month of April to June 2019. This is the statistics that you got so far from the Petroleum Institute of East Africa. We are seeing Total being the highest, having the highest market share at 16.3%. Then we have Vivo. Remember Vivo bought Shell, the Shell Petroleum Station company rather, and then it's standing at 16.1%, coming the largest in terms of the market share. Then we have Kenol Kobil, which was bought by Rubis. And Rubis is a French firm which bought Kenol Kobil, and Kenol Kobil nowadays is Rubis, coming at 15.4%. Then we have Ola Energy at 6.8, Gulf at 6.2, NOC at 4.3, Galana at 2.7. That is just a way, just a breakdown of how the market share has been in terms of the largest importers here in the country. We're seeing Total Kenya being the first, and 16% going to Vivo, which bought Shell. And Mr. Karanja, when I'm looking at this breakdown in terms of the market share, some of these petrol stations I'm mentioning are the same petrol stations that fuel gas stations that are actually selling the product. So how has the business been like for the independent distributors?
Now, the independents occupy, if we start talking about the sales, market share, we sell about 45%. And then the multinationals sell the other 55%. But in terms of the space, the number of stations, we have more stations which have been licensed, about 55%. And while the multinationals have the others, although they sell more than us because they chose to come to the urban centers when we went back to the rural areas. Such that, but where we get our products from, we get from these now. Now it depends. Even the ones who have a bigger percentage are the ones who supply to us. So whatever they supply now adds into their sales.
And the reason as to why, before I bring in Honorable Kero into the conversation, the reason as to why I was giving this breakdown of the market share, it's because as we're speaking, the independent distributors are not selling fuel. Yet we are seeing these importers, in terms of the market share that I've given, are the same ones selling fuel. And you're saying that the same ones who are also giving you the fuel to sell. So why can't it happen now that they distribute to the independent distributors fuel so that you are able also to remain in the market during this time of the fuel shortage?
I would like to explain the genesis of what is happening. Because when the multinationals invited us into this business, because they are the ones who created the window and calling us now, you are able to do this business. Back in 1995, those sites. So we increased, and other people saw that there is good business here, so we became very many. So these multinationals thought, now again we are taking over their market. So now they started again, they are trying to close us down. They have actually been trying to buy off most of our stations, and they have taken. After frustrating us during the supply, acquiring the stocks, I thought it was easy to do this business, but then now I can't access the products, what. Then I just decide now, if I get somebody to, lease off the station, then the multinationals come over, they buy these stations. They have tried to buy them, but then more stations are still coming up. Now, when they are trying to stop us, it becomes so hard. And I think now, the current problem is two-pronged. There is this issue that people are talking about. That is one, it is true. The government had delayed their payments, but then they had a chance now to lock us out. And they have locked us out in a very technical way because they are claiming that there is not enough product, yet the government is saying there is enough product. Such that by that excuse, now they are not selling to us.
All right,
our stations are dry.
So kindly confirm to us, your stations, your pump stations are now closed. They're not operating at all.
No, where do you get the products? You can't. You can't.
All right.
Unless the few who are, they are in those high places and they have their petrol stations, then in one way or the other they'll just get a few.
So Honorable Carol, here we are seeing, Karanja is trying to give us a genesis of how they began working with the importers, and then now they're also trying. His explanation clearly is, it's like they're being locked out of this sector. And he says during this time now, they're not selling, they've actually closed shop. But then interestingly, we are seeing some of these gas stations selling the fuel at a higher rate than what IPRA has announced to Kenyans.
Well, I think, I don't think, I was in petroleum energy, and I remember in 2012 we had a similar situation of stock out. And the multinationals blamed the independents, which included our company and so forth. And the questions of, that the independents are taking up all the space on the infrastructure, on the pipeline, the KPC, and that they're not able to get to import. And that's why they wanted to squeeze the independents out. And this matter ended up before the parliamentary committee. But let me tell you this. In my view, the way the petroleum is acquired by all the registered and licensed marketers is the same. There is a tender done by the ministry every month, and every company who is licensed will put in their requirements based on their share that has been approved by the ministry. So every month your import quantity is guaranteed under the OTS system, which is managed by the ministry. So I don't think there is a situation where if you are an independent oil marketer, you are not among the top multinationals oil marketer, but you are licensed and you have participated in the OTS, your product will come. So I think what Karanja is talking about is the service stations out there in the rural areas that have to buy the products from the depots here in Nairobi and Mombasa and so forth from the, as held. But in my view, independent petroleum companies who have imported the products also have, in the same way the multinationals have, the challenge upon them is two. One, the cost of the product shot from 90 to almost 150, including, that's the cost. And second is that the government is not able to release that, the 30 shillings extra, 30 shillings extra subsidy that's supposed to cover that cost. And so the cash flow implications is there, the huge cost of the product. So I think I can understand that some of the probably quantities may reduce for the independents that they are taking on every month.
All right.
But I don't think that the current situation really is about the independents only, because.
Right. But then
reading the figure, Brenda, the figure that you gave, the figures you read, it's clear that over 50% is controlled by 5 or 6 companies. Those 5 or 6 companies, if they have the product, there is no reason why they cannot put it in the station, and there'll be no shortage, I can assure you, because 50%, that's a huge percentage, and they'll be able to supply at least the main cities, because they control all the service stations, or majority of the service stations in the major cities. But the reason is the same one that I have given you. It's all about that subsidy. I think that is the challenge. But on Karanja's issue, I think clearly, when we had that meeting before parliamentary committee, we were able to demonstrate that in the last 20 years, 90% of the investment in the sector, including in the petrol stations, fuel depots, it's been the independents.
Correct.
The multinationals had not actually. In fact, it is following that they suddenly now decided, they said that they must start investing. And this is when they started now taking up service stations. That was the argument we put forward, that these people are not investing, particularly rural areas outside the main city.
I get you. So
they are not there. Yeah.
I get you. So before I bring in Karanja, there's an important question I'd asked you, and it's good you've mentioned. The reason as well, again, we're having in this discussion today is because at some point in your life, you took part with, you're in that oil business and later on left. But then the question is, why are we seeing some fuel stations during this time when Kenyans are, facing this fuel shortage, hiking the fuel prices that have not even been announced by IPRA? You go to a fuel station, you're expecting to buy a fuel at 134 shillings per litre, but then you end up paying more than that. And then you're told you can only be sold for fuel for 1,000 shillings. That's obviously is criminal. It's an offense, because the good thing with the price control is if you sell at any price over and above the gazetted price by EPRA, it's illegal. And so, I mean, it's a question of a particular station engaging in a criminal activity, engaging in an offense. And I think it's up to the regulatory authorities, police and all the regulators to take action on that, because it's illegal. You cannot sell at higher than the approved price, because every station, the pump price, they get a margin of 11 to 12 shillings, approved for them by the government. So there's no reason why you should charge something more. That now is illegal, and that is something that the government needs to take action on. All right. So now let me also give another breakdown. First, we've looked at the breakdown in terms of the market share. But then let's have a look at another breakdown in terms of the consumption patterns. That's for 2021. That was last year, and we're getting this from the KNBS. We were not able to get that for 2022, but what I have right now, what you're seeing on your screen in just a few, what you'll see on your screen in just a few minutes, is a breakdown for the year 2021. That was last year, January to December. And when I look at the petroleum, diesel, in December, our consumption was really high as a country as compared to petrol. In December, our consumption was only at 147. Then for kerosene, definitely, it was the lowest. If I may, kerosene, what you're seeing right now, I'm actually ahead. I'm on track. In December, diesel was 199. That is what we consumed as of until December. And then petrol, we consumed 147 as a country, and kerosene was 8.1. Now that that breakdown is out there, Karanja, in terms of the losses, what have you incurred?
I want to say that it is very high. In fact, it has led to some people closing down. Others releasing their petrol stations, of which they intended to make a living from. They have released them to the multinationals, because the way the system is, which is informed by the major boys, that is suffocating their independence. Somebody came in, you went for finance, you came with the money, but slowly after 4 or 5 years, your money is finished. And then somebody comes from the multinational, and there is something that I wanted to mention, of which Mheshimiwa just touched, is about the independent oil marketers. Independent. There are a few local importers, those who participate. They are licensed, of which we are not there. But they don't supply to us, because they just import a little for their own use, for their petrol stations. Others have other tenders. They just import just sufficient for their use, because they cannot enter into this market, which is very much being controlled by the bigger boys. They can even sell at a loss just to make sure that you don't buy the next time. It is so serious. You know, it is very, 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 very hard inside there. The many small oil marketers can't talk about it, because we know what happens. And they cry out there without mentioning, because the system is informed by the big boys only. And they can even time you and say, now, this consignment that you have bought, we'll make sure that you sell it at a loss. They have a way of playing it. If you want, I can explain it. But in terms of losses, I'm telling you, unless the government shields the independence, we are so much exposed. We don't have our own products. The system is designed by what it was informed by the multinationals. We are just bad. And this shortage which is there, the crisis which is here, I tell you, like now, if you go eliminating the issues which are being blamed, the president yesterday signed 34.4 for oil subsidies. Why is it that today there was no fuel?
In fact, hold on to that thought, because it was coming to that question on how long it will take, for the money to reach the importers, because they want to be paid by the government. Just hold on to that thought. Honorable Kero, when I go back to that breakdown that I gave in terms of the consumption patterns, we're seeing as of December last year, the consumption for kerosene in the country was 8.1 metric tons. That number is clearly down in this month of March because of the fuel shortage. So how is the government cushioning, or rather going to cushion, the common mwananchi?
Good question, but Brenda, by now you should know the government doesn't care so much about the common mwananchi. For one, the December is the peak season, so it's the consumption for December in any year is the highest. It's literally around Christmas. Anytime from October, November, then those 3 months, particularly in December, it's likely that the consumption almost goes double what in other months. Second, I think, is because the price from January has really shot up, all the way to 134. So, for petrol. So the same thing, similarly, it has been going up for kerosene. And so the consumption goes down. When the prices go up, a lot of people fall off and go back to charcoal or other things. But again, I want to also emphasize that the government has not been keen. Where I started from, that the government doesn't care about the ordinary. They have 18 shillings, what they call anti-adulteration levy on kerosene. I mean, just to discourage big boys from adulterating their fuel in the petrol stations, you punish the poor person out there to pay 18 shillings more so that this kerosene doesn't get into diesel. I mean, really, there are other ways of controlling adulteration in petrol stations, and I think it brings me to the bigger question. Brenda, if the government really is concerned about the price, the issue is not about subsidy. Why do you want to bother about subsidy? We have said many times that out of the 134, between 70 to 73 shillings is tax and levy by the government. 9 different taxes and levies. You know them all. I mean, we've talked about it so many times, from excise duty, VAT, you talk of petroleum development levy, railway development, even for SDR, you pay per liter of petrol that you are going to buy. For the merchant, for the anti-adulteration that I've mentioned, RLMF, the road maintenance levy, the idea, 9 different, totaling up to almost over 50% of the cost. Now, if the government really wants to avoid this cash flow situation, looking for money for subsidy, and which is where the problem is, all you need to do is remove some of those things. Why do you want people to pay railway? Why do you want someone to pay excise duty about 23, 24? You can remove any one of this, and they don't have to pay a subsidy. The price will just go down to where
Honorable Kero, so why? Because the president signed this yesterday, and this gave, Kenyans got a sigh of relief. They're like, oh, the president has signed it, so when I wake up today, I'll get fuel. Why has it taken so long for this to be implemented?
That there's no reason. Once the government undertakes to pay you, government debt is a guaranteed debt. If they undertake to pay you, they will pay you. However long it will take, it will be paid. But I think there is a sense in which the players in the industry are a bit worried about these delays. in getting their money because it affects their cash flow. But once the government releases, it can take a few days for the money to get to them. But
all right.
I mean, really, they should. And I think I like the way the peers, warned that if they don't, then their licenses will be at jeopardy. But I think it's important that the big players appreciate that, one, they get a very comfortable margin. Really, a very, when I was in this thing in 2012, Brenda, there was no price control. Mm-hmm. So you would struggle to get a shilling, 2 shillings in a pump. Today, you are 12 shillings or 10 shillings or 11, 12, I think, is guaranteed margin. So they don't make a loss at the pump station. So there's no risk there. The only thing is that the delay in the subsidy, which is affecting the cash flow. So the independents may be affected and they fall off because they can't afford the cash flow delay. Right. They cannot afford, the huge cost now in buying, all that product. But right. The big guys have the capacity. They should not really. I mean, unless there is more to this than the subsidy. And I like reading into what Karanja just said. When the way the pricing mechanism has been set, it's straightforward. It's the main variable is the international price.
All right.
So, however, when the government came under pressure from Kenyans a couple of months ago, there was an attempt to try and put pressure down so that the margin does not, the cost does not go up because they have to absorb the differences.
All right.
I think.
All right, I've had you. So Karanja, will you be able to buy new stocks?
It's very hard, and okay, some people may try to squeeze themselves a bit harder, but the availability is the problem now, because if they are claiming that they only have sufficient for their stations, it means that there is no opening for the independents. And you see, the cry is louder where the independents are concentrated. In the major towns, tomorrow, the day after, they'll be fully stocked because of that reason. But then we still feel that because they had an alternative of importing these products, exporting these products to the neighboring countries where they could make ready cash, and profits guaranteed, and nobody's keeping their money. So that is one excuse. They brought in just lean stocks. Now for us, who are in the mashinani there, where do we get our products? Unless they open up. I think the government just, exposed us, left us exposed.
So,
unless we are sufficiently stocked or allowed to access this product, then this problem persists.
So what you're telling us is, even if the oil market, the importers, have been paid their money by the government, and they decide to, finally release the oil that they have, at the mashinani level, this shortage will continue because you do not have money to buy new stocks.
Yes, and yes and no, because they are, Kenyans are very sharp. They are fast in deciding. We can get finances. From the word go, we know where we got our funds from. So we can buy the products as long as it is at a level ground. But then the access now is the problem. Who is going to supply to get us the products? And everybody is claiming that I just have enough for my stations. So when they say like that, we can't. And I'm just thinking, because Mheshimiwa was in that business. At some point, I don't know, I'm just trying to make, he left. The challenges for independence. You see, even those people who are, capable, they're still stepping aside.
Right.
Because the way the system is structured does not favor an independent person.
All right. Honorable Kero, I know that's a personal decision, but I was about to ask you, the same question that Karanja is asking, why you left.
What Karanja says is true in the sense that Petroleum is a very capital-intensive business, let me tell you. If you are buying just 1 million liters in a month, that's 130 million. Like now it costs 130 million. So it's huge. Not to mention how much one station costs on average to build, 50 to 100 million. So it's a capital-intensive business. If you have so many stations, then you can imagine out there. So I agree that finance, from what I heard the PSA, it's one of the limitations because of the high cost now of the product. Right. And it's affecting not only petroleum, by the way. I mean, vegetable cooking oil, it's the same. If you go to every industry, the challenge is there because the cost of production has doubled in literally every business, cement manufacture, everywhere, things have doubled. So the capital cash flow has become a major issue for many businesses, which are not able to attract financing from our banks for one reason or the other. But Karanja should appreciate the one thing in business. If an importer, a multinational, say Total is importing a product, of course they'll give the priority to their stations when there's a limitation. When there's no limitation, they'll serve everyone. I mean, all their customers, all their clients. But if there is a limitation, naturally, you would expect that they would give priority to their stations in the first place.
All right.
But from the where I sit today, there is no limitation in importing. The importing is coming in, and I think the PS was very clear that the ships are docked there in Mombasa. That's not the issue. The issue is that the multinationals are not playing ball because of this subsidy. I think really the spotlight should be on them because they are the major vendors of the product in the station.
In all this sad incident, I put it sad because we are all experiencing this situation of fuel shortage. Kenyans are calling on the government to help them, the members of parliament to help them. Who has failed them?
Let me give my points. Who failed them? One, I think, clearly, of course, is in this current, situation of very high prices and so forth. Both parliament and government are responsible, really, because we have talked about this for a long time. Kenyans have said, look, please make things easier. Fuel is cheaper in other countries. Reduce the taxes, eliminate some. But the government, because of the debts and so forth, has been resisting the pressure to reduce. So the high cost it's a function clearly of the failure of the government and parliament. The second point is that where the government really has not been mindful of the interests of the country or the economy, parliament ought to have played a more significant role. And I think in this, they have clearly also failed to do so. Because when you have a country where they have approved a budget of 3.3 trillion, and they know the situation, the current situation, one of the things that they ought to do is to ensure that there is adequate subsidy for petroleum so that Kenyans can be cushioned about, because it affects all sectors of production, really, the high cost, and makes life more expensive in everything. Lastly, and I think the players, I think, in my view, where you have contracted with government, it's a certainty that you'll get your money.
All right.
So in a situation where they're the only ones, I'm telling you, it's the only industry I know of where the prices are controlled and they are guaranteed a very comfortable margin. There's no reason why the players should really hold the government to ransom or the country to ransom because their subsidy has delayed. I think they can use other pressures to get the subsidy out.
All right. So Karanja, yesterday I heard the PS say that attributed the shortage to panic buying. Kenyans deciding to, buy and fill their tanks, panic buying. Is that the reason as to why there's fuel shortage?
Even if it can be viewed as panic buying, but what was the cause? What caused this panic? Now, I want to shift the perception from what people have been thinking about, and I've said it again. But there is something that I wanted to clarify about the volumes, because the government and all the players knows that Kenya consumes about whatever million liters, maybe 30 million liters. Mm-hmm. This is including what we sell and what the multinationals, such that even if we don't buy, our volume is subdivided to those who are importing it. Our figures are included there, which should be released to us. But it's not that you are given a portion which is meant to be, to cater for independence. Then when it arrives here, then you divert it, you sell it, across the borders. This is putting us in a very awkward position, because yes, you are given my share to bring in so that I'll buy it from you, but then when it comes and you find another market out there, you sell that product, then you leave me.
Are you telling us that is the situation on the ground right now?
These are the things. People are discussing things that they don't understand. We are at the ground and we see. We are privy to this information. We know that the government of Kenya will order for a certain number of million liters. When it brings in, when the products comes in, now it is diverted to be, instead of selling to us, the independents, it is diverted now to other areas, which now again leaves us dry. You had asked.
I'd asked you, in fact, I was coming back to that question about the PS attributing the shortage to panic buying.
No, he's my friend, and we discuss sometimes. And, everybody would ask himself, and what caused this panic? We come back again to what I'm talking about. I think people should just now start observing what I'm talking about, and see how the big boys who are importing all that products, what they are doing with that product. Right now, it is all of it is lying here. It's not about the price, because they had foreseen this. Kenya, like now, if they are going to tender for purchasing products now, these are products which will be sold in May. It is a month plus one. Such that it's not supposed to be affected by that time, because those areas, those challenges have already been taken care of. Nobody can say that mafuta sasa iko bei ghali. No, it was that issue was handled when the purchasing was being done.
All right. And Honorable Kero, Karanja brings in an important point. Most of these independent petroleum distributors are within the mashinani areas at the county level, uko chini mashinani, and they're the ones who have feeling the adverse effect of this fuel shortage, apart from Kenyans of feeling it. So it begs the question, when the country was experiencing this fuel shortage, it didn't just start at once in different parts of the country, but we saw it starting from the mashinani level, and then now this week, and for the better part of last week, as from Friday, is when now it hit Nairobi County.
Very good.
And if I may add, Bilokero, allow me to cut you short, the most interesting thing, even Mombasa, where this depot is, doesn't have fuel.
You see, the fuel, Brenda, when it comes, it is discharged at Kipevu, oil storage facility of Kenya Pipeline Company. And from there, it is pumped through the Kenya pipeline to Nairobi, Nakuru, and Eldoret. I can tell you for a fact that sitting in his office, the PS or any of the people in the Ministry of Energy, just on the touch of a button, they will know exactly how many liters is lying in the pipeline and how much is in the storage and how much is for. All the fuel that is in the Kenya pipeline, it's indicated 2-3 times a day. They submit reports to all the players, including the ministry, how much of fuel is available for every company. So they know for Total how much fuel is in their depot and how much is lying in the pipeline, and everything is known. I mean, at the bottom, they know, the ministry knows everything. But I told you earlier that these big companies, they call the shots in the ministry. And what Karanja said at on the onset of this question is correct, that the export market to the regional countries today as we speak, is more lucrative than the local for one reason, the dollar. If you are aware of what's been happening in the last few weeks, getting dollars has been a challenge for businesses because of limitation. The prices has gone up to, the exchange has gone to 116, 117. For export, you are paid in dollars. Locally, it is in shillings, it's a cost. So I would not be surprised on what Karanja says, that some of these multinationals have preferred to move their products to those markets because they get better better opportunity in terms of terms, in terms of profits, in terms of the dollars and everything. So that's quite something the ministry can easily, the click of the button can know what's going on. But again, the ministry is a ministry that is really, at the end of the day, those 4 or 5 companies are the ones that call the shots in the ministry. Lastly, on the issue of what you have asked, the panic buying, of course, is aggravated by the shortage. So it's expected. When there's a shortage, everyone will try to rush and fill his tanks and make the situation worse. But where it started, for example, if you look at Mombasa, the fact that it is in Mombasa, it does not make any difference because the product, like I told you, goes to the storage tanks, and from there it's pumped to upcountry. So Mombasa also has got some local depots where they buy the same way Nairobi has depots, and Nakuru and Eldoret and all these places. So it doesn't have any other preferences. So it's the same. But I can assure you, the situation will be worse, if not already worse, in the rural areas, because that is where 90% of the market is served by these independent petroleum companies. And if it is true what he's saying, the big guys are now diverting the fuel for export. Of one reason or other, they are slowing down on it, and they're not giving them. Then clearly, in those areas, the situation is likely to get worse in the coming days.
All right. So as we bring this conversation to an end, gentlemen, I'll begin with you, Karanja. Should heads start ruling within the ministry? Because the president signed the supplementary.
Yeah, and I felt the pressure. I felt like the president just came in to rescue the situation. Otherwise, I want to blame the managers, because they ought to have seen this thing before. If it is about the subsidy, they should have seen it before. When you are given such responsibilities to cover the nation with your ideas, you see, this is just the result of somebody's idea, which proves to be wrong, and you take the whole nation into a situation. I think, I don't know whether it's to change, I don't know what to change, but now that the constant is already varied, the formula should be changed.
All right, the formula should be changed.
Yes.
And Honorable Kero, as you wind up, 2 weeks down the line, yesterday we see the president coming out to sign the supplementary bill. Didn't he come very late to the rescue of Kenyans?
Yes. Brenda, we elect a government to run this country. And it's the government that is required to ensure that services are available, fuel is available. It's the responsibility, the buck stops with the government at the end of the day. I would have expected by now, obviously, the government should have engaged all the players in the industry and addressed this matter, because this matter was in the media more than a week ago when it started in Eldoret and other outlying areas that there was a shortage. It should not have got to where it is today, but there seems to have been a laxity on the part of the government in trying to address the matter. But second is that, for example, the issues the independent raise can also be addressed in that kind of engagement. That the multinationals are asked that you must provide 20-30% of your imports, oil markets to independents, so that there is that level playing field. There are people who have invested, and they also to ensure that there is product in the areas of the country where the multinationals do not go. And I think these are things that can be done if the government wants to. But I agree that it's a little late in the day. They should have engaged them and given them assurance that their money is coming, and get the product in the pumps.
All right. Thank you so much, Bill Okero, former senator for Mandera, for talking to us Tonight on a KTN Newsline, there you've